While electric vehicles might be the future, they are not selling quite as fast as some had expected. And this presents a marketing challenge to automakers. For instance, how do you promote EVs while still driving sales for gas-powered cars, which still account for the overwhelming majority of sales? Hello, my name is EJ Schultz, news editor at Ad Age, and my guest on this week's Marketer's Brief podcast is helping Mercedes-Benz solve this problem. Melody Lee joined the luxury automaker about a year ago. She had spent 6 years at Cadillac before leaving in 2018 to take roles outside the automotive industry. On the podcast, she discusses what it's like to be back and how Mercedes is going about marketing its EVs, gas-powered cars, and hybrids all in a single campaign. And we also get into a few other topics, including how Mercedes-Benz is using sports marketing. And now, my conversation with Melody. Hi, Melody. Welcome to the Marketer's Brief podcast.
Thanks for having me, EJ.
So I think you've been at Mercedes for about a year now. You had spent about 6 years at Cadillac, and then you took a little break from automotive, working in an agency role, I know, and also consumer goods brand for a while. So why did you decide to get back into automotive and why Mercedes in particular?
Coming back to Mercedes at this point about a year ago was like coming into a almost completely different automotive industry. And that's where the appeal lied for me, EJ. To come back at a moment when the entire industry is grappling with how to move into the electric future meant that all the challenges for the marketer would be completely different. And the chance to be a part of that, to lead a team into that, was just something that I couldn't turn down.
And let's talk about that EV future, because I think things have not exactly played out exactly how automakers envisioned it. We've seen some cooling of the EV market in the last year. And part of that, we've observed some brands kind of changing their marketing a little bit around EVs to account for kind of maybe the slower adoption. One thing I noticed that Mercedes is doing is running a campaign called Pick Your Powertrain, which actually promotes EVs, but it also promotes within the same advertisements, gas vehicles and hybrids. Can you talk about that approach? Is that sort of your acknowledgement that yes, not everyone is ready for an EV, so you want to position all your vehicles together?
If any of us could read the future or had a crystal ball, we'd, own our own island somewhere in the Caribbean, right? So I think as the inventor of the automobile, going back to 1886, when Carl Benz got the patent for the first car, we have a burden at Mercedes-Benz of always leading the charge, being at the forefront of innovation and technology. And for us, that meant being ambitious about the future of electrification when it comes to vehicles. Now, again, when adopting any new technology, you're looking at a certain curve. And I would say that we're just now reaching a flattening of the curve, so to speak, when it comes to the adoption. Does that mean that our strategy changes? Absolutely not. It means we just need to prepare for several different eventualities instead of perhaps what we thought at the beginning of this race. So what you see running on TV right now, also on many other channels as a full 360-degree campaign, is indeed a campaign that we colloquially call Pick Your Powertrain. Officially, it's called Trinity, with the E being capitalized. And the focus of that campaign is not so much about powertrains or which engine you would like to opt for. It's about the luxury of choice, because at the end of the day, that's what's true to the Mercedes-Benz brand. It's not about the technicalities of whether you want internal combustion or electric or hybrid. It's about the fact that we have all three at Mercedes and we can offer the customer whatever it is that they want. That's what's been true to this brand for many years, over 100 years, is providing the luxury of choice and what customers want. And so even if that curve is flattening, we see electrification as a marathon, not a sprint. And that means we need to meet customers where they are and with what they want. And that's the first sort of one glimpse that you can see with one campaign out there.
So as a marketer, your job is to sort of keep your finger on the pulse of consumers. What, in your view, is the reason that maybe EVs haven't taken off as quickly as maybe some in the industry were predicting a couple of years ago?
Again, not unlike any other technology out there, when the iPhone first came out or any other technology that comes out, we're still at a part of developing electric vehicles where, admittedly, and everybody will say this on the record, they're expensive to develop, and they're expensive then for our consumers as well. So you had a lot of early adopters move into battery electric vehicles quickly, and now we're watching to see where the rest of the customer base goes. I think the other challenge that we're grappling with is we don't have currently an infrastructure in the United States that is totally ready for 100% battery electric vehicle adoption, right? The good thing is that we're not waiting on the infrastructure to be built. We're not waiting on public entities to provide all of that. We're involved, in fact, in 3 different ways of helping to build the infrastructure and enabling the path towards battery electric vehicles. The first way is that we're building our own charging network. It's called the Mercedes-Benz high-powered charging network. We're going to have 400 different locations and over 2,000 chargers at those 400 locations by the time we're done with that initiative over the next few years. We're in a consortium with 7 other automotive manufacturers to build a charging network as well. And then third, as has already been announced, we're allowing our customers at Mercedes to have access to Tesla superchargers as well. So we're not sitting here idle, waiting for all of the infrastructure to be built. We're in fact trying to shape it to make it even easier for our customers to adopt electric vehicles.
And while you're running these Trinity campaign, I believe you're still running pure EV advertisements, right? I've seen the Mercedes Maybach being advertised, right? There's separate ads just for EVs. Is that still happening?
Correct, because again, it's not about EV versus ICE, right? As we would call the internal combustion engine. It's about making sure that customers and prospects know that we have something for them. So that means as a marketer and as a marketing team, we need to make sure that we're spreading the love between all of our different powertrains and ensuring we're right there when the customer is searching. So if they're searching for a GLC, great. We'll serve them the GLC content they need. But if they're interested in the EQE SUV, then we'll also serve them that content and make sure we're communicating about it. Because we're in that moment now where we're trying to communicate about both powertrains and now also hybrid as well, which you're seeing a surge in interest in if you look at any search data out there or social media data out there. So we need to make sure that we're out there communicating that we have all 3, but that what ties them all together is that uniquely Mercedes-Benz brand and experience.
I have some other topics I want to get into, but before I do, I want to remind our listeners about Ad Age's Business of Brands event, which is set for September 18th and 19th in Chicago. You can hear from marketing leaders at United Airlines, Molson Coors, State Farm, and others. You can find out more at adage.com/business of brands. That's adage.com/business of brands. Okay, Melody, I want to move up about a 30,000-foot view of luxury marketing overall. Obviously, Mercedes is a luxury brand. We've heard a lot over the last several years about Gen Z, younger consumers, maybe not being quite as into like luxury material purchases and more into experiences, perhaps. I don't know what segment of your purchases come from Gen Z or younger consumers, but can you address generally where you see the luxury market heading right now?
Sure. At the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter what portion of our customers purchasing Mercedes are what generation. And maybe that's a bit of a hot take, but the reason I say that is because even if today many of our purchasers are, say, boomers, Gen Xers, and some millennials, Mercedes has to stay true to Gen Z and to even my own kids coming up, which is Gen Alpha, right? We want even Gen Alpha hanging posters of Mercedes cars in their bedrooms, even if they can't buy the car. So the challenge for a marketer is always twofold. It's not only selling and marketing the cars that we have today to the audiences that have the disposable income to buy them. It is also about remaining as relevant as possible to the younger generations coming up. Because even if they don't have the money to purchase the cars right now, we want them to dream about Mercedes so that when they do get old enough and they have saved up the money and they're in a position to buy, they become our customers as well. So we've got a balance between both selling and building the brand and creating Mercedes as a luxury brand that they want to become a part of. And I think that's what luxury marketing, to come back to your question, really is at the end of the day. It's not just about selling the product. It's not just about selling the service. It's about selling a world, selling an experience, and bringing people into it, wanting them to be a part of it. Because at the end of the day, again, luxury marketing is not just about a rational marketer challenge. It's not about saying, EJ, I know that you're in the market for this car and I know you'll pay this much. Now let me tell you about all the attributes of this car that make it worth it for you. For luxury marketers, we're trying to get people to pay an even more intangible premium on top of what they pay. But alongside that, you need to invite them into a world. So I think that's what luxury marketing really is, and what the real challenge is. Even if you move past the powertrains and you move past electric and ICE, we've got to keep that three-pointed star as appealing to all ages as possible for the next many decades and even next century.
And can you talk about ways that you're doing that right now?
Absolutely. So we, again, have to balance between the need to market in the United States in a way that keeps our volume targets hit and met, alongside big brand building moments that puts the star and puts Mercedes in front of the right consumer base. So let me give you a couple of examples. We just came off April, our biggest activation for marketing, which is the Masters tournament, probably the premier sports platform in all of marketing. We take that opportunity not to just run above the line campaigns on television or digital campaigns. We also take those 7 or 8 days to give our customers, our dealers, our VIPs, anybody that's part of the Mercedes orbit, unforgettable experience. Because going to the Masters is one thing, going to the Masters with Mercedes-Benz is a whole nother thing. So for us, that is not just being there, being present, generating brand awareness, but that association and that building of the image of the brand that's really important with the Masters tournament. And then I'll give you another example on the other side of things. Luxury brands have a responsibility to do things that are meaningful for the world as well. If we talk about a brand that invented the automobile, that's always been at the forefront of technological innovation, we also have to talk about our leadership with our next generation. And so for us, sustainability and responsibility are also really important. And as part of our corporate social responsibility initiative, which we call Driving Your Future at Mercedes, we are very active in our communities and giving back with our partners Safe Kids and Junior Achievement, so that the next generation is prepared for where innovation is taking them as well. And I'm happy to actually share with you, you're one of the first to learn that, as a little bit of a tease, this summer we have a really exciting partnership coming up with Safe Kids and Scholastic to debut something really special around a character that you might even know, EJ, which is a certain large red furry dog that has been beloved for many generations and decades with children. And we're taking that opportunity to debut something really special this summer with Safe Kids.
That would be Clifford, right? And what is that exactly?
Well, I can't share too much, or the team here in the room with me might kill me. But as you know, Clifford is a wonderful character for helping to educate on any number of issues. And so we'll use that opportunity working with the Scholastic team to publish something that will be true to what our initiative, Driving Your Future, is about, which is keeping kids safe.
Of course, one way that many brands are staying in touch with younger generations is via TikTok. Does Mercedes, how do you approach TikTok?
So for us, TikTok is part of that area that I mentioned earlier, which is staying relevant with those younger generations, being in the conversation. I think the first thing that marketers have to realize, no matter who they're selling to currently, is you've got to be up on what is going on. What is the conversation? Even if it only lasts a couple of days, which happens in the TikTok world a lot. Sometimes it's hours, sometimes it's days. And you probably know this, EJ, just from speaking to a lot of marketers and being a part of this world, but there's any number of, call it fill in the blank talks. It's book talk, auto talk, food talk, whatever it is. And those are sort of the sub conversations that are happening within TikTok that we need to be aware of, that we understand are driving culture. And so one of the first things that we really strive to do is not only understand what those conversations are, but where Mercedes-Benz might fit into the conversation, right? And then that is in commenting and being engaging as part of that content. That's really important to us. We also had a first in industry partnership with TikTok for automotive last year that I can provide a little bit more information to you at another time. I don't have all the specifics around it right now, but it's really important to us that we're experimenting and we're testing and learning with these new platforms so we understand what works and what doesn't work. But for us, being on platforms like that is about speaking to that next generation coming up.
You mentioned the Masters, and obviously, you know, Mercedes has a long history of marketing around golf, tennis, kind of where we've traditionally seen luxury automotives play. I know you ended the US Open sponsorship in 2022. And at the same time, you guys have invested in esports, newer sports. So how do you balance kind of your investments in those traditional sports with the newer up and coming sports like esports?
It goes back to this balance that we need to strike between our customers that are ready to purchase right now and those that aren't there yet, but will come into that place in life eventually, right? And so our investments in, say, TikTok, as we just talked about, or esports, is intended to get to that next group of people coming through. But at the same time, we need to make investments where we know those eyeballs are qualified and ready to go, right? And so that's why we remain big in golf globally, not just with the Masters, but as a brand globally as well. I'll tell you this though, now we're also trying new twists on things, right? And a great example of that is our partnership with Eastside Golf. If you're not familiar with Eastside Golf, they're a duo, Elijah Wan and Earl, who founded a brand based on opening up the sport of golf to more people, not just generations, but even those that might not typically have had access to the sport. And so our partnership with Eastside Golf spans several different initiatives, but part of it is a large donation to a historically Black college and university, Morehouse College, here in Atlanta, which enabled their golf team to not only go to the Masters, but even pick up a new Sprinter van for their team. It also meant launching Eastside Golf's first 9-piece capsule collection for women, because they debuted with accessories and clothing for men. That became available the first weekend of the Masters as part of our Augusta Women's Amateur event. But generally speaking, the idea behind our partnership with Eastside Golf is to say, we've been this great leader in partnering with the Masters for 17 years now. The challenge to us, to ourselves now, is what are we doing now? What are we doing for the next group coming up? How are we opening up the sport of golf, which historically, let's admit, has not been easy to break into or to access? How are we opening it up for more people to participate in it? And so our partnership with Eastside Golf is also a really big part of that.
So before we leave, I wanted to ask you one more topic quickly. I know when you were at Cadillac, you were involved with Book by Cadillac, which was a subscription service, right? And we saw at the time a lot of automakers sort of experiment with subscription services, where you sort of subscribe to a brand, an auto brand, and obviously every program is different, but you could have drive various models through that one sort of subscription fee. I don't think that ever took off like some had expected. Looking back on basically vehicle subscription services now, do you think there's still a future for it?
I continue to be really proud of the fact that Cadillac was the first automotive manufacturer to debut vehicle subscription services. There are a few OEMs that are still out there with subscription programs in some form, Porsche being one, Volvo being another that I'm aware of. At the end of the day, it's not about the business model itself. I think what it really was valuable in showing to the industry was that we had to meet our customers a different way. And that's how Book by Cadillac was born. And I think that's the challenge to all automakers today, is how do you not only give them the vehicle that they want, but give them the purchase experience that they want. So subscription in that sense was incredibly valuable in shining a light on the fact that customers were wanting a different way to buy outside of the traditional channels of lease and purchase, going through a dealer necessarily, or just through digital retail as some of the more electric brands today are doing. So it was still, in my opinion, a very valuable exercise that really taught the automotive manufacturers to think in a different way. As a marketer, what's valuable is that it pulled us out of what we think customers want sometimes, because it was born out of the fact that we actually asked customers what they wanted. And they said, we want a different way to experience a vehicle that doesn't necessarily entail a purchase or a lease. So I believe as marketers or as anybody in this industry, we need to continue to ask ourselves those questions. What is it a customer really wants when it comes to a vehicle? Is it purchase? Is it access? Is it just an experience? So in that sense, I think the subscription conversation was still a great one to have.
All right, Melody, we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank you again for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
That was Melody Lee, Chief Marketing Officer at Mercedes-Benz USA. My name is EJ Schultz, News Editor at Ad Age. I want to thank our producer, Lauren Ciardio, and invite everyone to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite channel. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.